Alright everyone, it's time for the Occult video number 298, The Wolf of Soissons. Now, there is a link in the description here. I know I'm not a big fan of Wikipedia at this point for a lot of political and social things because they're heavily censored. They have a severe bias in their material, lots of lies by structure and omission in articles. That being said, it's still pretty reliable when it comes to a lot of like cryptids, animal attacks, and weird stuff. By the way, look up like lists of bear attacks and wolf attacks and stuff and spook yourself out before you go to bed sometime. It's pretty fun. When I was a kid, I was afraid of large dogs. Then I became bigger than most of them, and that fear slowly waned. I'm actually going to read this to you verbatim. However, with my thoughts then at the end, because it is a bizarre story, and it's linked to the Beast of Gévaudan, similar sort of scenario, only these attacks happened over the span of only 2 days. Keeping that in mind, we'll read about the sheer number of people and animals killed or injured by this one particular animal. And again, I'll have to opine because there's a little bit of a mystery as to how this actually occurred. The Wolf of Soissons was a man-eating wolf which terrorized the commune of Soissons, northeast of Paris, over the period of 2 days in 1765, attacking 18 people, 4 of whom died from their wounds. The first victim of the wolf was a pregnant woman attacked in the parish of Septmont on the last day of February. Diligent locals had taken the second trimester fetus from the womb to be baptized before it died when the wolf struck again, not 300 yards from the scene of the first attack. One woman named Madame d'Amberif and her son survived only by fighting together. On the 1st of March, near the hamlet of Courcelles, a man was attacked by the wolf and survived with head wounds. The next victims were 2 young boys named Boucher and Maréchal, who were attacked on the road to Paris, both badly wounded. A farmer on horseback lost part of his face to the wolf before escaping to a local mill where a 17-year-old boy was caught unaware and slain. After these atrocities, the wolf fled to Bazouches, where it partially decapitated a woman and severely wounded a girl who ran screaming to the village for help. 4 citizens of Bazouches set an ambush at the body of the latest victim, but when the wolf returned it proved too much for them, and the villagers soon found themselves fighting for their lives. The arrival of more peasants from the village finally put the wolf to flight, chasing it into a courtyard where it fought with a chained dog. When the chain broke and the wolf was pursued through a pasture where it killed a number of sheep and into a stable where a servant and cattle were mutilated. The episode ended when Antoine Savarel, a former member of the local militia, tracked the wolf to a small lane armed with a pitchfork. The wolf sprang at him, but he managed to pin its head to the ground with the instrument, holding it down for roughly 15 minutes before an armed peasant came to his aid and killed the animal. Savarel received a reward of 300 livres from Louis XV of France for his bravery. Now, it's a little bit of a short, terse article here, but crams a lot in there. My question is this. Normally, when this sort of thing happens, and this is only over the course of a couple days, you'd say, well, the animal was rabid, it was in its vicious stage specifically, and so it just began attacking anything that moved. It happened to be in this general, cosmopolitan region, and so went from place to place, slaughtering a bunch of people. The problem is, where in the article does it mention any of the mammalian species that it attacked and presumably bit in the process? Cattle, sheep, a dog, or multiple dogs maybe, and 18 people, killing 4 of them. Not a single case apparently of rabies. Now this was a big thing in the 18th century in France and elsewhere in Europe. Outbreaks could be common. You have no apparent contemporary report that any of those that were injured by this animal got hydrophobia. Again, it would have been reported on at the time because that was a big thing. I've edited grimoires from the same period, the Petit Albert and similar works, and almost all of them have like folk cures or folk preventions for hydrophobia or to ward off rabid animals and stuff. I think there's a charm involving a wolf skull actually in the Petit Albert, if I remember correctly, burning it with herbs at the edge of your village to ward off the miasmas as well. So wolves and hydrophobia and things attendant canine species quite commonly were known. You've got no apparent reports that any of the victims had that happen. And it doesn't say how large this animal was, but to be able to mutilate a bunch of cattle, fend off multiple citizens at the same time, and to survive 15 minutes with its head pitchforked to the ground, this must have been a fairly powerful animal too. And also, there's one other thing in this article you may have noticed that would generally defy vicious stage rabies, which is that it finally fled. There'd be no reason that an animal that's completely insane and attacking everything that moves would flee just because a few more peasants happen to show up as opposed to just 4. Doesn't make any sense. In fact, the whole story begs the question, was this some sort of hybridized animal that just went completely apeshit out of starvation? Starvation would be the other possibility, but then, if that were the case, why did it not apparently attempt to consume any of the animals and humans that it was attacking? There's pretty much no explanation I can think of for this specific incident, other than a vicious hybrid. Maybe it was the same kind as the Beast of Gévaudan. Maybe they did breed a bunch of them to try to convince people the end times were upon us. Brotherhood of the Wolf reference, excellent movie by the way. In reality, you would think maybe hydrophobia, and it was a total coincidence that none of the dozens of potentially infected animals and humans got it. But that's not likely. The likelihood of an individual bite causing rabies, okay, especially with preventative measures like we've got nowadays, is low. Quite a number of them, including attacks that were quite, significant, people being partially dismembered and mutilated and stuff, and then potentially surviving for some time, basically having been sewn up. Not a single report of hydrophobia, which would indicate rabies. It's very strange, especially when it manages to fight a dog. It gets chased into one stable, kills a bunch of animals, manages to get into a second area and kill a bunch of others and another human. You'd think at some point this wolf had to have sustained injuries as well, or this wolf hybrid or whatever it was, managed to survive for 2 days with what must have been significant injuries. Even if it drove off the peasants that initially tried to corner it, it would have gotten hit a few times. Maybe would have gotten shot at, certainly would have gotten sliced up, and if it was in crazy mode, rabies-wise, would also be extremely thirsty because hydrophobia causes that. You can't swallow water or generally food, which would explain why it wouldn't attempt to gorge itself on any of the victims, but none of the victims got hydrophobia. A very, very strange story altogether. I just found this because I was researching the Beast of Gévaudan, and this was one of the stubs that were included here, and I thought it was a little bit of a spooky story as we move towards Halloween. Of course, that basically begins September 1st for me anyway, so spooky times to come. That's about all. Peace out.